Give it what he wants.
Good.
Can you talk to me a little bit about, for people who don't necessarily have an appreciation of art yet because they're not educated about art, what are some of the misconceptions, or how do you speak to them about the appreciation of art?
Well, that's a big question today because there's no art in the world today, not the way it was in the olden days.
Mm-hmm.
It started modernism was real art. It was not commissioned. It was people doing their own thing. It started with Impressionism and went on from there. Today, there's no education going on about real art because today the art market, it became a marketing product,
Mm.
and so everybody can get what they want, and nobody really knows what to look for or to look in a way that they'll find out what's going on. When modernism started with Impressionism, it went from just people doing painting outside and doing a painting in a day, or maybe two paintings in a day, and expressing themselves in a way that was developing the idea of creative process. And and you know, I studied creative process in the whole, and I taught uh, art history for 7 years at the Art Institute of Boston, and and I found that in art as it came to the 20th century was about creative process. What is creative process? Developing ideas that that I don't know, that each movement moved from the next movement, the previous movement, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. So in like the Impressionist movement was the beginning, and there were people like Pissarro, uh, Claude Millet, and Manet and Millet, the three M's. We have to know that Pissarro didn't get any credit for the movement, but he was the beginning of the movement. Camille Pissarro. And that's a whole story in itself. But what happened from the Impressionist movement, it moved to Fauvism, which was
Sorry, it moved to what?
Fauvism,
Fauvism?
yeah, or Post-Impressionism,
Okay.
the next movement, which was Van Gogh and Matisse and Gauguin and Cézanne. those four started the movement. And each one of those people started a movement in the South. Van Gogh started Expressionism, and Cezanne started Cubism. Not really, but it took off afterwards. And people developed ideas from the Fauvists, who developed ideas from the Impressionists. And you can move on from there. So Fauvism, and then Expressionism was the first movement in the 20th century. And then came Cubism, and then came then came you okay? Then came Cubism, and after Cubism came I don't know.
I'm sorry, Dov Barrett, I want to steer you back to as an artist who primarily was interacting in your people in your community, people, the general public.
Yeah.
I don't know that, you've talked about art being much more design centric, design centered, design oriented today, that there was this transition.
Yeah.
But whether art was design centered or it had a more pure expression prior to being design centered, people who were not educated about art may not necessarily have understood art. And so what I'm trying to ask you is, what did you observe about where most people misunderstand art, or what is their what is the common misconception about art writ large?
Well, there's something to look at and think on your own. That's the main thing that modernism displayed. What does it mean to you, the person? Look at it without thinking, oh, Kandinsky, who started the Contrasters movement in Russia, he said, you have to look at something like your 3-month-old baby and your parents brought you to the seashore and you saw a wave coming in, a big wave coming in for the first time. What would you think when you saw that wave? It would be an experience that you didn't see before, and you would have thoughts about that experience. So that's what Kandinsky said is art. So look at it without a thought in mind and see what you think when you look at it. I guess mindfulness today would be kind of that thing. And so, what I found, this creative process, what I call it, was ongoing. Each movement discovered a different thing. Each movement moved from the previous movement to what was currently going on. There were several movements in the 20th century, and It began with Impressionism, and it ended with conceptualism, and conceptual and minimal and earth art. That's where it ended in the mid '80s. The mid '80s it ended, and now it's design and some extreme skills of people that have in knowing what went on before, and they're the beginning of the new movement today. Some people call it most postmodernism, and some people call it junk. But it's designed for not for pleasure, but be designed on you all. People are buying it online and in furniture stores. There's a lot of people, and galleries. Unless you have the proper tools that gallery wants, you can't get in. And now they have a lot of cooperative galleries, so artist-run galleries. And I hope that answers your question.